imitation firearm, and that was in early October. Now, there's about 62,000 of these existing in South Australia. Gel blasters were declared a regulated limitation firearm in early October, and police say that only a very small number have been surrendered, and 183 people have made applications for a firearm licence to keep theirs. So what are we really saying here? Let's talk to the firearms branch at SAPOL's officer in charge, Superintendent Steve Howard. Steve, thanks for joining us today.
Good morning, Leon.
There's a really important question here. If these numbers are going to be consistent with either the hand-ins or the registrations, and they're well short of the actual numbers, are we saying here that there are going to be a significant number of people who are illegally owning these firearms that haven't told you?
Well, it's difficult to say because since people have been buying gel blasters, which has been a number of years, they weren't regulated. So we don't have any information on who owns them or what they've done with them. And as I've said previously, they're not the most robust device, and when I think they've got a lifespan of between 12 and 18 months, especially the earlier models, and it's likely people would have thrown their gel blasters out over these years as well. So we're not seeing the number of gel blasters being handed in as a measure of success. It's establishing the regulated industry and preventing crime and victimisation by the unlawful use of gel blasters will be the measure of success for us.
All right. Now, what we need to clarify here, because I know this has been discussed before, but what are the proportion of crimes that you can say, Leon, people have committed offences using these where the victims might have reasonably thought, and of course from just a few feet or even a bit closer, you can't tell the difference. What's been the incidence of criminal activity committed by people using gel blasters as a firearm that victims thought were the real thing?
Well, as I've said before, there's been over 180 instances that have come to police attention, and it's ranged from actual physical assaults where people have been shot by gel blasters, and the victims have ranged from children to adults, to people being threatened and just causing general concern when they see someone waving a gel blaster out in the community. And they were the reasons why they became regulated and the injuries that they can cause as a firearm.
All right. Now, so anybody that's got a gel blaster that hasn't handed it in and hasn't registered it, what do you want to tell them?
Either surrender them or apply for a licence. It is early days, and people are probably making up their minds, and the amnesty does give them the option of holding on to their gel blasters until the 7th of April. They've got some time to make a decision, but there's only two to make: hand them in or get a licence.
All right, so there'll be some that'll say, I bought this at a time when no such rules existed. You've retrospectively changed it. I'm not giving it up. So are we saying that as of April next year, if you don't and you've still got it, you're committing an offence by having it?
That's right. It's an offence under the Firearms Act to possess a firearm without a licence, and the penalties can be quite significant. 4 years for a Category A licence, $20,000 fine, up to a $50,000 fine, or 10 years imprisonment for a prescribed firearm. A
lot of people are going to say that's overkill. What do you say?
No, firearms ownership is a serious responsibility, and while it's a legitimate sport, it has legitimate uses in the community. They are regulated and regulated for good reason. All
right. Steve Howard, thank you. I just wanted to clear the air and get the Superintendent Firearms SAPOL issue just out on the table, because in a moment we're going to talk with the Representative Association, who I know are raising funds to challenge this law. Of course, going to court's not cheap. So if you've got a view on this one, 8223 0000. Now, again, I know at the time when we talked about this, a lot of people were very upset when all of a sudden the rules had changed, but you've heard the justification. 8223 0000.
One of the best joys in life.
This is Leon Biner.
17 after 9. Well, we know now that if you bought a gel blaster some time back or even recently, and then you discovered that it was going to be designated as a firearm and you had to have a licence, for which, of course, there is a fee, you either had to pay it or hand it in. Now, there's another side to this, and as you know, when we do stories, we always give you the opportunity of knowing the full argument, not just part. So the treasurer from the Gel Blasters Association is filing a class action against these new laws, and they've so far raised $19,000 to support legal costs. Let's talk to the individual that we refer to as Chris Sinclair. Chris, good morning.
Good morning, Leon. How are you?
Good. How much do you reckon it's going to cost you to contest this in court? It won't be cheap, will it?
Look, $50,000 is normally what it costs in a Supreme Court case.
Yeah.
So we can raise that pretty quickly, and we will. So that's not going to be an issue. My concern is the South Australian government, once they lose, are actually going to have to foot the bill for that. So all your South Australian taxpayers.
Now, what is the contention that you'll put to the court that makes you confident that you'll win this?
I'm not going to discuss that on the radio, mate, to be truthful. So we'll just say that South Australian police have acted unlawfully, and they've bypassed the democratic process in Australia by doing what they've done.
All right. So this is going to be, it depends how long this case will take, but in the meantime, status quo remains. So what's your comment? Now, the police have said this morning, and you've heard this before, the reason they're doing this is overall public safety, that people, albeit not that many, but when you consider stats, but still one is one too many, you've had a number of people use these weapons, which it would be very hard for people to identify whether they're real or not. And so the best thing to do is to have them considered a firearm. What's wrong with that?
Well, they're a toy. So they're a toy. They cause more damage to someone by throwing them at them. We have, in Queensland, we had incidents up here, right? And I think the stats for the same period, we had 24,674 knife incidents, and we had 273 gel blaster incidents. Yet the gel blast was demonised because of the anti-gun agenda in Australia, even though they're a toy.
All right, so
South Australia probably have similar statistics. I haven't bothered looking into it.
Okay, that's fine. So you're going to take this on in court. You hope you're going to win, and
we will win. Yeah,
you will win. You're very confident, but you don't want to tell us why.
Yeah, exactly right.
All right. So,
Sorry, mate.
so tell me, why does a toy have a association representing it?
Well, because government are trying to force the hand on we have career politicians trying to make policy and police trying to make laws, which they're only there to enforce them, right? So I'm probably a classic protagonist personality type where, I see something wrong, and there's a lot of people in the industry who do see something wrong with this, and a lot of people outside of it, and we're standing up to career politicians that have no real skin in the game in society other than what they're doing in office. All
right, I just want to get this, because I wasn't aware that any association for gel blasters existed before this became controversial. Yeah. So that is the case, that you have been spurred into action.
Absolutely.
Now, you know that the psychologists out there, and it doesn't matter who you ask, will say that psychologically no firearm is a toy.
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
I'll say if you consider something that can only shoot a water pellet that you put in vases to hydrate your flowers a firearm, then they're mistaken. And that's what the legislation says as well.
Well, you see, the problem again is that even a trained eye at the moment would find it hard to differentiate a gel blaster from the real thing. Isn't that the issue here?
Look, that is part of the issue. It's part of the issue. So in Queensland, we worked with Queensland Police and we implemented some behavioural modification sort of programs through the retailers, which they were very supportive of. So we had incidents drop down from, I think we're averaging, it was 273 up until September in last year. That's less than 2 a month now. The issue is the people who are out there doing these things, it's your kids who are 17 to 21. It's the known age group. They're probably already known to police for, being the local imbecile. And this is just the new fad that they're using it with. They do it with a baseball bat. They do it with a knife. They do it with a banana. They do it with anything they can. So it's demonising the product isn't the outcome. It's the behaviour that is actually what the real problem is.
But you can say that with anything, though, can't you? Look, Chris, thank you for coming on. That's Chris Sinclair. I wanted to get his view on this as well as the police. So I want to ask you, where do you stand on this? Where do you stand on it? Do you think the police are right? Do you think Chris is right? What's your reason why? I've told you what the psychologists say. See, it's true with many things that if you misuse an item, whose purpose was a designated, very different purpose, then the question is, do you take the item off those people lest they misuse it because of the damage they will cause? Not that somebody gets shot with a gel blaster, but rather somebody gets held up and they think it's a real weapon. And I've met people who've had that happen, and I tell you what, they're gone for the rest of their lives. Another note here from Chris: those fringe groups have impenetrable but faulty logic. What do you think? Let's ask David. David, what do you think about this one?
This sounds absolutely ridiculous. So, put this point, I'm an adult male in my 40s, and it's my right to dress up in camouflage, run around with a toy gun, and pretend to be in the army, or a cowboy. So what are they going to do? Complain about Tamagotchis and that? Tell these old blokes to grow up and bloody go and get a job, push a wheelbarrow and do something. It's like this. Fighting over a toy.
So you think there's no argument at all that these gel blasters should be regulated?
Oh, I think these blokes should get their heads looked in. It's all right for kids running around with a cap gun and that, but adult men running around playing with toy guns and all that, and then they go on a court, want to spend $50,000, tell them to grow up.
All right, thanks, David. Let's talk to Jeff. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, I just heard the comment a few weeks ago by the police commissioner or whoever it was. Okay, and he says, they can do damage to eyes and so on. My concern is that because they are registered as a toy, there's a lot of toys out there, even called Nerf guns, which are in Kmart and so on. Some of them are black and they look like guns. And even a Nerf that's got a hard tip end, they can actually bruise an eye or do damage as well. So is that going to be a marketplace with all gun-looking things then, if that's the case?
Well, you're saying this is a slippery slope then. Once you start with gel blasters, what's next? Is that really what you're saying?
Yeah, correct, mate, because these Nerf guns, they look like a gun too, and some people wouldn't have a clue what they are.
Mm. Do you have a gel blaster?
No, mate, I'm not into that sort of stuff, but I'm just being a bit of a devil's advocate here, because
yeah, that's fine.
It goes right across the whole board, and you're talking about a toy in Kmart.
All right, thank you. Interesting point. Love to get your view on this. I mean, I don't have a gel blaster. I think I've got one person I know that has. Steve Howard, Superintendent, you wanted to make another point on this. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Leon. Chris made the point that they are water pellets. Now, these gel blasters, they fire a hydrated polymer gel that can cause eye injuries. Yeah. There's been a British Medical Journal paper written on the injuries that these devices can cause. If you were to run a venue, to get insurance, you need to have eye protection. Your skin has to be covered. They cause injuries. It's not accurate when these people say they are a toy and they do not cause injuries. They do. And there's proof that they do. You just have to look on YouTube, Google gel blaster shootings, and you'll see the marks, the welts, and the injuries they cause. All
right, so just to clarify, Steve, Superintendent, as of April next year, if you own a gel blaster and you haven't either handed it in or paid your licence registration firearm fee, you're stocking or having or holding an illegal weapon. Is that right?
That's correct. You're in possession of a firearm without a licence.
Superintendent Steve Howard, thank you. Interesting debate this. I mean, the whole point is a contest of ideas. Now, the police say it's not safe. I guess there's one observation I would make. Any pursuit now that has any element of risk, what we might have thought was okay even 5 or 10 years ago, look how things have changed. Look at health and safety risks on just about every single thing. Let's talk to Jeff. What do you think, Jeff?
Well, Leon, a couple of years ago, I was walking my dog, and a guy drove past me and hung me out of the window.
Yep.
And I kind of just looked at him and thought, I don't know what he's doing anyway. Then I saw him do a U-turn as I got to the park to walk the dog. He pulled up about 10 feet away from me and pointed a gun at me, a pistol, out of his window, straight at me. And I thought, I honestly nearly had a heart attack. So it looked like a real gun to me.
So how did
I
you
got
know,
back home.
How did you know it wasn't a real gun?
Well, that's right. So I got back home, phoned the police. The police came round to my house. I knew where the guy lived, actually, just walked past his house when he drove out. So I told the cops where he lived. And so they went round and saw him. Then they came back to me. And they said, oh, yeah, we went in the house, we confiscated the gun. And he said and they found some marijuana plants and stuff like that. But then he said to the young bloke, he said, look, that looks like a real gun, and that's an actual offence to do that. He said, and also, if there had been an unmarked police car saying cruising around the area at the time, he said, you could have actually been shot because to anyone else, it looks like a real gun.
Yeah, you make a good point, Jeff.
They asked me if I wanted to press charges, which I could have.
Yeah.
And I said, no, look, just give him a slap on the wrist because I don't want to ruin the guy's life because of a stupid thing like that. But it can be very serious. It's a very serious thing to do.